Ben stood at the edge of the bustling city, his heart pounding with hope. He had left his small hometown behind, promising himself he would never return. The city was his chance to make something of himself, to escape the poverty that had haunted his family for generations. He clutched his small bag tightly, his mind racing with dreams of success. "I'll make it big," he whispered to himself. "I'll show everyone I can survive on my own." Years passed, and Ben's hard work paid off. He found a job, saved money, and even started a small business. He married a kind woman named Lisa, and they had 2 children, a boy named Tom and a girl named Sarah. Life seemed perfect, but as Ben's wealth grew, so did his pride. He stopped visiting his family in the countryside. He ignored his siblings' calls and refused to help his aging parents. "They'll only drag me down," he told himself. "I have my own family to take care of now." But the city was unforgiving. One day, the government introduced a new policy that made it nearly impossible for Ben to afford Tom's university fees. His business struggled, and his savings dwindled. Desperate, Ben turned to his siblings for help, but they turned him away. "You abandoned us," his brother said coldly. "Why should we help you now?" With no other options, Ben sold his house and moved his family to a tiny apartment. But things only got worse. Lisa fell ill, and the medical bills piled up. Tom grew angry and distant, blaming Ben for their struggles. Sarah, just a child, cried every night, asking when they would go back to their old life. Ben felt like the walls were closing in. He had no one to turn to, no friends, no family, no hope. One night, as Ben sat alone in the dark, he remembered his father's words. "No matter how far you go, family will always be your home." Tears streamed down his face as he realized how wrong he had been. The next morning, he packed his family's belongings and drove back to his father's house in the countryside. The journey was long and silent, but Ben's heart grew heavier with every mile. When they arrived, Ben's father greeted them with open arms. His siblings, though hesitant, welcomed them too. Ben apologized, his voice trembling with regret. "I was wrong," he said. "I thought I could do it all on my own, but I need you. I need my family." As the days turned into weeks, Ben began to heal. His father's wisdom and his siblings' kindness reminded him of the importance of family. But just as things started to look up, Ben fell ill. The stress and guilt had taken their toll. As he lay in bed, weak and frail, he realized the truth. Family was the only thing that truly mattered. No amount of money or success could replace the love and support of those who cared for him. The countryside air was crisp and fresh, a stark contrast to the smog-filled skies of the city. Ben's father, an old man with a kind face and weathered hands, welcomed them into the small, cozy house. The walls were lined with family photos, and the smell of homemade soup filled the air. Ben felt a pang of guilt as he looked around. This was the home he had left behind, the family he had turned his back on. Lisa and the children settled in quickly, finding comfort in the warmth of the family they had never really known. But Ben couldn't shake the weight of his mistakes. Every time his father smiled at him or his siblings offered help, he felt like he didn't deserve it. "Why are you being so kind to me?" he asked his father one evening. "After everything I've done." His father placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because you're my son," he said simply. "And family forgives." But forgiveness wasn't easy for everyone. Ben's younger brother, Sam, still carried a grudge. "You think you can just come back and everything will be fine?" Sam snapped one day. "You left us to struggle while you lived your fancy life in the city. Do you know how hard it was for us?" Ben hung his head, unable to meet Sam's eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was selfish. I thought I could do it all on my own, but I was wrong." Sam didn't respond, but the tension between them lingered. Meanwhile, Tom and Sarah were adjusting to their new life. Tom, now a teenager, struggled with the sudden change. He missed his friends and the life he had known in the city. "Why did we have to come here?" he asked Ben one night. "Why can't we just go back?" Ben sighed, his heart heavy. We can't go back, Tom. The city, it's not our home anymore. This is where we belong now. But Tom wasn't convinced. He started spending more time alone, avoiding his family and sulking in his room. Sarah, on the other hand, thrived in the countryside. She loved running through the fields, playing with her cousins, and listening to her grandfather's stories. But even she could sense the tension in the house. "Why is everyone so sad?" she asked Lisa one day. Lisa hugged her tightly. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," she said. "But we're trying to fix them. Everything will be okay, I promise." As the weeks passed, Ben's health began to decline. The stress and guilt had taken a toll on his body, and he found it harder and harder to get out of bed. One night, as he lay awake, he heard a soft knock on his door. It was Sam. "I didn't come to fight," Sam said, his voice quiet. I wanted to say I'm sorry too. I've been holding on to my anger for so long, but it's not helping anyone. You're my brother, and I don't want to lose you." Tears filled Ben's eyes as he reached out to Sam. "Thank you," he whispered. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm so grateful for it." The next morning, Ben gathered his family together. "I need to tell you all something," he said, his voice weak but determined. "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but the biggest one was thinking I didn't need my family. I was wrong. You are the most important people in my life, and I'm so sorry for everything I've done." The room was silent as his words sank in. Then, one by one, his family members stepped forward, wrapping him in their arms. Even Tom, who had been so angry, couldn't hold back his tears. "I love you, Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't want to lose you either." Ben's heart swelled with love and regret. He knew he didn't have much time left, but he was determined to make the most of it. He spent his days teaching Tom and Sarah the lessons he had learned, sharing stories of his childhood, and cherishing every moment with his family. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Ben sat on the porch with his father. "Do you think I've done enough?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think they'll be okay without me?" His father smiled, his eyes filled with love. "You've given them the most important thing of all," he said. "You've shown them the value of family. They'll be just fine." Ben closed his eyes, a sense of peace washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, he knew he had finally found his way home. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the small living room. Ben sat at the table, his hands trembling as he stared at the pile of bills in front of him. Tom's university admission letter lay on top, a reminder of the dream that seemed impossible now. Ben sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I don't know what to do," he whispered to Lisa, who sat beside him. "We can't afford this. Not after everything that's happened." Lisa placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with worry. "We'll figure it out," she said softly. "We always do." But Ben wasn't so sure. His health was failing and he could barely work. The little money they had left was barely enough to put food on the table. He glanced at Tom, who was sitting quietly in the corner, his face pale and tense. The boy had been silent ever since they moved to the countryside, his dreams of university slipping further away with each passing day. That evening, Ben's siblings gathered in the kitchen. Sam, the youngest, leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. "We need to do something," he said, his voice firm. "Tom is a smart kid. He deserves a chance to go to school." Ben's sister, Mary, nodded in agreement. "But how? We barely have enough for ourselves. How are we supposed to come up with the money?" There was a long silence as the siblings exchanged uneasy glances. Then Sam straightened up, a determined look in his eyes. "We'll find a way," he said. "We'll pool our resources, take on extra work, whatever it takes. We're family, and family doesn't give up on each other." The next morning, the siblings sprang into action. Mary, who worked as a seamstress, began taking on extra orders, staying up late into the night to finish them. Sam, a mechanic, started repairing cars on the weekends. His hands covered in grease as he worked tirelessly to earn extra cash. Even Ben's older brother, Joe, who had always been quiet and reserved, offered to help. He sold some of his prized possessions, including an old guitar he had cherished for years. Ben watched in awe as his siblings worked together, their determination unwavering. He wanted to help, but his failing health made it impossible. Instead, he focused on supporting Tom and Sarah, encouraging them to study hard and never give up on their dreams. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Sam placed an envelope on the table. "We've been saving up," he said, his voice filled with pride. "It's not much, but it's a start." Ben opened the envelope, his eyes widening as he counted the money inside. It was enough to cover the first semester's fees. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at his siblings. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to repay you." Sam shook his head. "You don't have to repay us," he said. "Just promise me one thing. Never forget the importance of family." As the weeks turned into months, the siblings continued to work together, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. They organized a fundraiser in the community, selling homemade goods and hosting a small concert. Even Tom and Sarah pitched in, selling lemonade and cookies to raise money. But the road wasn't easy. There were setbacks and challenges along the way. One day, Mary fell ill and couldn't work for weeks, leaving the family short on funds. Another time, Sam's car broke down, and he had to spend a large portion of his savings to fix it. But through it all, the siblings refused to give up. Finally, the day came when they had enough money to cover Tom's entire first year of university. The family gathered in the living room, their faces filled with pride and relief. Tom held the admission letter in his hands, his eyes shining with gratitude. "I won't let you down," he promised, his voice steady. "I'll work hard and make you all proud." Ben smiled, his heart swelling with love and pride. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope. His family had come together in a way he never thought possible, proving that no matter how far you fall, family will always be there to lift you up. But as the days passed, Ben's health continued to decline. He knew his time was running out, and he was determined to make the most of it. He spent his days teaching Tom and Sarah the lessons he had learned, sharing stories of his childhood, and cherishing every moment with his family. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Ben sat on the porch with his father. "Do you think I've done enough?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think they'll be okay without me?" His father smiled, his eyes filled with love. "You've given them the most important thing of all," he said. "You've shown them the value of family. They'll be just fine." Ben closed his eyes, a sense of peace washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, he knew he had finally found his way home. The days grew shorter, and the air turned colder as winter approached. The family's efforts to raise money for Tom's education were far from over. While they had managed to cover the first year's fees, they still needed to secure funds for the remaining years. The pressure was mounting, and the strain was beginning to show. One evening, as the family gathered around the fireplace, Sam cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice hesitant. "I might have a way to get more money, but it's not going to be easy." Everyone turned to look at him, their faces filled with curiosity. "What is it?" Mary asked, her brow furrowed. Sam took a deep breath. "There's a construction job in the next town. They're paying well, but it's dangerous work. I'd have to be away for a few months, but it could be enough to cover Tom's second year." The room fell silent. Ben's heart ached at the thought of Sam putting himself in danger. "Sam, you don't have to do this," he said, his voice trembling. "We'll find another way." Sam shook his head. "There is no other way, Ben. We've already stretched ourselves thin. This might be our only chance." The next morning, Sam packed his bags and left for the construction site. The family watched him go, their hearts heavy with worry. Ben felt a pang of guilt as he thought about all the times he had turned his back on his siblings. Now they were willing to risk everything for his children. Meanwhile, Mary continued to work tirelessly, her hands calloused from hours of sewing. One night, as she sat at her sewing machine, she noticed a sharp pain in her chest. She tried to ignore it, pushing through the discomfort, but the pain only grew worse. Finally, she collapsed, clutching her chest. Ben rushed her to the hospital, his heart pounding with fear. The doctors diagnosed her with exhaustion and stress, warning her to take it easy. But Mary refused to slow down. "We're so close," she said, her voice weak but determined. "I can't stop now." As the weeks passed, the family's sacrifices began to take a toll. Joe, who had always been quiet and reserved, started to withdraw even more. One night, Ben found him sitting alone in the barn, staring at an old photograph. It was a picture of their mother, who had passed away years ago. "I miss her," Joe said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She always knew what to do. She would have found a way to fix this." Ben sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We're doing the best we can," he said softly. "And I know she'd be proud of us." But Joe shook his head, his eyes filled with doubt. "I don't know, Ben. Sometimes I feel like we're fighting a losing battle." Ben's heart ached at his brother's words. He wanted to reassure him, to tell him everything would be okay, but he wasn't sure he believed it himself. The weight of their struggles was becoming too much to bear. One day, as Ben was helping Tom with his studies, he noticed the boy's hands trembling. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Tom hesitated, his eyes downcast. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if I don't get into university? What if all of this is for nothing?" Ben's heart broke at the fear in his son's voice. He placed a hand on Tom's shoulder, his grip firm but gentle. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of you. You've worked so hard, and that's what matters. We'll figure it out together." Tom nodded, but the worry in his eyes remained. Ben knew they were running out of time. They needed a miracle, and they needed it soon. That night, as Ben lay in bed, he prayed for the first time in years. He prayed for strength, for guidance, and for a way to give his children the future they deserved. And as he drifted off to sleep, he felt a glimmer of hope, a faint whisper that everything would be okay. The first snowfall of the season blanketed the countryside in a soft, white layer. The family woke to a world transformed, but the beauty of the snow did little to ease their worries. Sam had been gone for weeks, and the letters he sent were brief and vague. He mentioned the work was hard but didn't go into detail. The family could only imagine the dangers he faced. One morning, as Ben was helping Sarah with her homework, there was a knock at the door. It was a neighbor, Mr. Clark, his face pale and his hands shaking. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, his voice trembling. "But there's been an accident at the construction site. They're saying one of the workers was hurt." Ben's heart stopped. He rushed to the phone, his hands shaking as he dialed the number Sam had given them. The line rang and rang, but no one answered. Panic set in as Ben imagined the worst. "I need to go there," he said, his voice frantic. "I need to find Sam." Lisa placed a hand on his arm, her eyes filled with worry. "You're not well enough to travel," she said gently. "Let me go. I'll find out what's happening." Ben wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. His health was too fragile for such a journey. Reluctantly, he agreed, and Lisa set off for the next town, leaving Ben to care for the children. The days that followed were agonizing. Ben tried to keep busy, helping Tom with his studies and playing games with Sarah, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the fear that something terrible had happened to Sam. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lisa returned. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red from crying. "Sam's alive," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But he's hurt. He fell from a scaffold and broke his leg. He's in the hospital, and they're saying he won't be able to work for months. Ben's heart sank. Sam's injury meant they had lost their main source of income. The money they had saved was barely enough to cover Tom's first year, and now they had no way to continue. The weight of their struggles felt heavier than ever. That night, as the family gathered around the fireplace, the mood was somber. Joe broke the silence, his voice quiet but determined. "We're not giving up," he said. "We've come too far to quit now. We'll find another way." Mary nodded in agreement, though her face was pale and drawn. "I'll take on more sewing orders," she said. "And maybe we can sell some of the furniture. We don't need much to get by." Ben felt a surge of gratitude for his siblings, but he couldn't shake the guilt that gnawed at him. "This is my fault," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "If I hadn't been so selfish, we wouldn't be in this mess." Lisa placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with love. "You can't change the past," she said gently, "but you can make things right now. We're a family, and we'll get through this together." The next morning, the family sprang into action once again. Mary worked tirelessly, her sewing machine humming late into the night. Joe sold some of the family's furniture, his face stoic as he watched the pieces he had grown up with being carried away. Even Tom and Sarah did their part, selling handmade crafts to neighbors and friends. But the challenges kept coming. One day, as Ben was helping Tom with his studies, he noticed the boy's hands trembling again. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Tom hesitated, his eyes downcast. "I got a letter from the university," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're saying I need to pay the next installment soon, or I'll lose my spot." Ben's heart sank. They were running out of time, and the money they had raised wasn't enough. He felt a wave of despair wash over him, but he refused to give up. "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice steady. "We always do." That night, as Ben lay in bed, he prayed again. He prayed for strength, for guidance, and for a miracle. And as he drifted off to sleep, he felt a glimmer of hope, a faint whisper that everything would be okay. The days grew colder, and the family's struggles seemed to grow heavier with each passing week. Sam's injury had left them without their main source of income, and the money they had raised was running out. Ben's health continued to decline, and the stress of their situation weighed heavily on everyone. One evening, as the family gathered around the fireplace, there was a knock at the door. Ben opened it to find Mr. Clark standing there again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a group of neighbors, their faces filled with determination. "We heard about your situation," Mr. Clark said, his voice steady, "and we want to help." Ben was speechless as the neighbors filed into the house, carrying baskets of food, blankets, and even a few envelopes filled with money. "We've all been where you are," one woman said, her eyes filled with compassion. "And we know how hard it is to ask for help. But you're not alone. We're here for you." Tears filled Ben's eyes as he looked at the faces of his neighbors, people he had barely spoken to in years. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to," Mr. Clark said, placing a hand on Ben's shoulder. "Just promise to pay it forward when you can." The next morning, the family woke to a renewed sense of hope. The neighbors' generosity had given them a much-needed boost, but they knew they still had a long way to go. They decided to organize a community fundraiser, a way to bring everyone together and raise the money they needed. The fundraiser was held in the town square, and the turnout was overwhelming. Neighbors brought homemade goods to sell, local musicians performed, and children ran around with laughter and joy. Ben watched in awe as the community came together, their support a testament to the power of unity. As the day went on, the donations poured in. People gave what they could, whether it was a few coins or a generous check. By the end of the day, the family had raised enough money to cover Tom's next university installment and even a little extra for the future. But the real miracle came in the form of a letter. As the fundraiser was winding down, a man approached Ben, his face familiar but hard to place. "I heard about your son," the man said, his voice kind. And I want to help. Ben frowned, confused. Who are you? He asked. The man smiled. I'm Dr. Harris, the principal of the local high school. I've been following Tom's story, and I think I might have a solution. Dr. Harris explained that the high school had a scholarship program for students in need. If Tom agreed to tutor younger students in math and science, he could earn a full scholarship to cover the rest of his university fees. Ben's heart swelled with gratitude as he listened to Dr. Harris's words. This is incredible, he said, his voice trembling. Thank you so much. Dr. Harris shook his head. Don't thank me, he said. Thank your son. He's the one who inspired us all. That evening, as the family gathered around the fireplace, Ben shared the news with Tom. The boy's eyes widened with disbelief, and then filled with tears. I can't believe it, he whispered. This is a dream come true. Ben placed a hand on his son's shoulder. His heart filled with pride. You've worked so hard for this, he said. And you deserve it. But remember, this isn't just about you. It's about all of us. We're a family, and we'll always be here to support you. Tom nodded, his face filled with determination. I won't let you down, he promised. I'll make you all proud. As the fire crackled in the hearth, the family sat together, their hearts filled with hope and gratitude. They had faced countless challenges, but they had come out stronger on the other side. And as they looked to the future, they knew that no matter what happened, they would always have each other with a scholarship secured. Tom threw himself into his studies and tutoring responsibilities. He spent hours at the local high school, helping younger students with their math and science homework. His dedication was inspiring, and the teachers often praised him for his patience and kindness. For the first time in months, the family felt a sense of stability and hope. But life had a way of testing them when they least expected it. One evening, as Ben was helping Sarah with her art project, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He tried to brush it off, but the pain only grew worse. Lisa noticed him clutching his chest and immediately called for help. The ambulance arrived quickly, and Ben was rushed to the hospital. The family waited anxiously in the hospital lobby, their hearts heavy with fear. Hours passed before the doctor finally emerged, his face grim. Ben has suffered a mild heart attack, he said. He's stable now, but he needs to take it easy. Stress and overexertion could make things worse. The news hit the family like a ton of bricks. Ben had been their rock, the one who kept them going even when things seemed impossible. Now they had to face the reality that he might not be able to carry that burden anymore. Lisa took charge, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. We'll get through this, she said. We've faced worse, and we've always come out stronger. Ben needs us now, and we won't let him down. The family rallied together, dividing responsibilities to ease the load. Mary took over more of the household chores, while Joe stepped up to manage the finances. Tom continued his tutoring but made sure to spend more time at home, helping with whatever he could. Even Sarah, though just a child, did her part by keeping Ben company and making him laugh with her silly jokes. But the strain was beginning to show. Mary's health, already fragile, took a turn for the worse. One night, as she was sewing by the fire, she collapsed again. This time the doctors were more serious. You need to rest, they told her. If you keep pushing yourself, you could do permanent damage. Mary nodded, but her eyes were filled with frustration. I can't just sit here and do nothing, she said. My family needs me. Ben, though weak, insisted on speaking to her. Mary, he said, his voice gentle but firm. You've done so much for us. But now it's our turn to take care of you. Please rest. We'll figure it out. Reluctantly, Mary agreed, but the family's challenges were far from over. With Ben and Mary both unable to work, the financial strain became even more severe. The money they had raised from the fundraiser was running out, and they still had bills to pay. One afternoon, as Lisa was going through the mail, she found a letter from the bank. Her hands trembled as she opened it, and her heart sank as she read the words. The bank was threatening to foreclose on their home if they didn't make a payment soon. Lisa didn't want to burden Ben with the news, but she knew she couldn't handle it alone. She called a family meeting, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "We have a problem," she said, holding up the letter. "The bank is threatening to take the house." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Tom was the first to speak, his voice filled with determination. "We'll find a way," he said. "We always do." But the reality was grim. They had already sold most of their possessions, and the neighbors had given what they could. They were running out of options. That night, as Ben lay in bed, he prayed again. He prayed for strength, for guidance, and for a way to save their home. And as he drifted off to sleep, he felt a glimmer of hope, a faint whisper that everything would be okay. The next morning there was a knock at the door. It was Sam, his legs still in a cast but his eyes filled with determination. "I heard about the house," he said. "And I have an idea." Sam explained that he had been in touch with an old friend who worked for a non-profit organization. The organization helped families in financial crisis, and Sam thought they might be able to help. "It's a long shot," he admitted, "but it's worth a try." The family agreed, and Sam set to work, filling out applications and gathering the necessary documents. It was a long and tedious process, but they didn't give up. And finally, after weeks of waiting, they received a letter. The non-profit had agreed to help. They would cover the overdue payments and work with the bank to restructure the loan. The family's home was safe. Tears filled Ben's eyes as he read the letter. "We did it," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "We saved our home." The family gathered around him, their hearts filled with gratitude and relief. They had faced countless challenges, but they had come out stronger on the other side. And as they looked to the future, they knew that no matter what happened, they would always have each other. With the immediate crisis of losing their home averted, the family began to breathe a little easier. The non-profit's assistance had given them a second chance, and they were determined not to waste it. Ben's health slowly improved, though the doctor warned him to avoid stress and take things one day at a time. Mary, too, began to recover, though she still needed plenty of rest. One sunny afternoon, the family gathered in the backyard for a small celebration. It wasn't much, just a picnic with homemade sandwiches and lemonade, but it felt like a victory. For the first time in months, they laughed together, the sound echoing through the fields. As they sat on the grass, Sam cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice hesitant. "I want to start a small repair shop in town. I've got the skills and I think it could help us get back on our feet." Ben's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea," he said. "But how will you afford it?" Sam smiled. "The non-profit offered to help with that too. They have a program for small businesses. If I can come up with a solid plan, they'll give me a loan to get started." The family cheered, their excitement palpable. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to rebuild not just their finances but their dreams. But not everything was smooth sailing. Tom, though grateful for the scholarship, was struggling to balance his tutoring responsibilities with his own studies. The pressure was mounting, and he began to withdraw, spending long hours alone in his room. One evening, Lisa knocked on his door. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. Tom nodded, his face pale and tired. Lisa sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "What's going on?" Tom hesitated, his eyes downcast. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted. "The tutoring, the classes. It's too much. I feel like I'm letting everyone down." Lisa's heart ached at the fear in his voice. "You're not letting anyone down," she said firmly. "You've done so much already, and we're all so proud of you. But you don't have to do it all alone. We're here to help." Tom nodded, but the worry in his eyes remained. Lisa knew they needed to find a way to ease his burden. Meanwhile, Joe had been quietly working on a project of his own. He had always been good with his hands, and he had started building small pieces of furniture to sell at the local market. One evening, he surprised the family with a beautifully crafted wooden table. "I thought we could use something nice," he said, his voice shy. The family marveled at his work, their pride evident. "This is amazing, Joe," Ben said, his voice filled with admiration. "You've got a real talent." Joe smiled, his face lighting up. "I've been thinking, maybe I could start selling these. It wouldn't bring in much, but every little bit helps." The family agreed, and Joe's furniture quickly became a hit in the community. People loved his craftsmanship, and orders began to pour in. It wasn't enough to solve all their problems, but it was a start. As the weeks passed, the family began to heal. Ben's health improved, and he started taking short walks around the property, enjoying the fresh air and the beauty of the countryside. Mary regained her strength and returned to her sewing, though she made sure to take breaks and rest when she needed to. But the real turning point came one evening, as the family gathered around the fireplace. Sam had just returned from a meeting with a non-profit, his face filled with excitement. "They approved the loan," he said, his voice trembling with joy. "I can start the repair shop next month." The family cheered, their hearts filled with hope. It felt like a new chapter, a chance to rebuild their lives and create a better future. But as the fire crackled in the hearth, Ben felt a pang of guilt. He looked around at his family, their faces filled with love and determination, and he realized how much he had taken them for granted. "I need to say something," he said, his voice quiet but steady. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at him. "I've made a lot of mistakes," Ben admitted. "I was selfish and I hurt the people who mattered most. But you've all shown me what it means to be a family. You've forgiven me, supported me, and loved me even when I didn't deserve it. And I want you to know, I'm so grateful for each and every one of you." Tears filled the family's eyes as they listened to Ben's words. One by one they stepped forward, wrapping him in their arms. Even Tom, who had been so distant, couldn't hold back his tears. "I love you, Dad," he whispered. "And I'm proud to be your son." As the fire burned low, the family sat together, their hearts filled with love and gratitude. They had faced countless challenges, but they had come out stronger on the other side. And as they looked to the future, they knew that no matter what happened, they would always have each other. This shows how shallow mindset of selfishness can mislead in life. Togetherness with love, we will always go far in the journey of life. Let's learn life.